so I'll be wrong very early.
Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah, but I mean, in general, even at ESL in Frankfurt, people were saying it was a little bit of a surprise Empire couldn't make it through and show up to play, of course, at the main event. But there has been a lot of high expectations for the team, I think, not just from you, but from a lot of people that have been following the team quite well. But again, I think you bring up a good point. Of course, first of all, it's top 16 in the world, like for TI, every time you know it's going to be the top tier of the top tier Dota. And at the same time, we discussed this yesterday, right? 2 weeks of events. It's very different from whether it's a 3-day line event or like a 3-month season event. Teams are going to adapt. They're going to have ample time to adapt for teams that usually don't perhaps do well at kind of the weekend lands, we could say. At the same time, teams like Team Secret, when you have that bullseye on your back, you have to have a lot more prepared when you're going to play that many more matches. So that'll be something exciting. For the main stream, now we will be going into LGD versus Cloud9. We already talked a little bit about LGD. Where is Cloud9, though, right now? I mean, obviously Cloud9 has a pretty big following in general, just because of brand name and also players. But at the same time, some people feel that maybe that kind of following hasn't really been met with the same expectations and results recently.
I chatted a little bit with Conrad, and he seemed very comfortable that their team was in a good place after ESL. ESL probably not the best tournament for them. Bone 7 wasn't with them for the preliminary part, and then they got eliminated in the first round. And, you know, that's probably not good for your hopes if that's your last land going into TI. But, yeah, they seem very comfortable. I actually have a lot of faith in this team. I think Cloud9 is going to be top 8 and probably top 6, even though historically they've been, you know, a little bit hit or miss. But
They were 6th last year, right?
yes, they are matched up versus LGD in the first round, so I think that is the match to watch.
Okay, fair enough. We already talked about the 3 matches going on today, but just in case some people weren't able to take a look at the entire top 16 before we move on, let's take a quick look at the groups before we jump into our matches, of course. Group A, so we did have the 2 wildcard teams, so let's talk about that. We had CDEC and then MVP Phoenix yesterday seeding into Group B and Group A, respectively, and then you can see the rest there. Some people arguing that Group A perhaps a little bit harder, but you know, not by a huge margin.
Tiny bit.
Just a little bit, right, Winter? Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, I would assume that's probably because of certain team names that we see in Group A, like Secret. But at the same time, I mean, Group B, there's definitely some big hopefuls on that side too. So I think it'll be a good, well, at least for the group stage, it will be a week, and then we'll see where everyone seeds, and then next week for the main stage, we'll see how things play out in the upper and lower brackets. So going back to Cloud9, though. You were saying, all right, overall, I mean, obviously different scenario than the other lands, especially very recently. You said Conrad feels a little bit better. Winter, what do you think about Cloud9?
I think they are a team that, for me, strikes me that they are in the middle of the pack, the middle of everything. But at the same time, they have the potential to be at the top, or something might go wrong and, you know.
I think that's for a lot of teams, though. I think the variance is just really
it's
high.
really difficult to say for them, but I think in general, I would like to have this feeling about Cloud9 that they're actually in the middle of the pack, probably top 8, like 6 to 8 would be fair for them.
Okay.
But they have the potential to go up,
right? Like
or
if
down.
they really show up and they could really reach high. Now, Ben, you were mentioning that. Okay, speaks for a lot of teams, right? Some teams are going to show up super hard. Some teams may have flops, and that's unfortunate. Are there any teams that you can say definitely stand out because they're much more stable at a higher than average level?
EG for sure.
Okay.
I actually think EG can take a lot of games off Secret. The few times that we saw them meet up, ESL, Dota Pit, EG was able to take a lot of games, and that's no small feat considering Secret has this impressive run during 2015. So I view them as one of the most consistent teams, and they might not be as wild in their drafting as Secret, but they're just so good at what they do. Even if it's predictable, it's still very hard to play against.
Yeah, and in addition to that, so the whole matchup at ESL, which is of course the last time we saw EG playing against Secret, at least in a LAN setting. It is the last time we saw them play.
Yes, in a LAN setting for sure.
That series went to 4 out of 5 games, and I think the 4th game EG actually had under control, and then they made a crucial mistake, and Secret took full advantage of that. But that series could have easily gone 5 games, and then who knows, right? I think those two teams are very closely matched, even though Secret has won the last couple of times. So I would definitely agree. Secret and EG are the 2 standout stable teams. And I would have put Vici Gaming up there if not for the last month, or the last 2 months, I guess. The last 2 months, they just haven't been looking as stable as they used to, because before that, they were like always top 3. And we'll see if they bring it back this year.
All
I
right.
think they will.
So Cloud9, we talked a little about that. Of course, LGD, you guys mentioned kind of why people are expecting them to be the best. Now, TI, though, obviously this is where most players will say they put it all on the line. I mean, this is where it all comes down to. This is a moment that every player has been living up to. And we've had a chance to meet players from all of the teams, of course, before TI has kicked off. But for our very first match, we've got a little bit of a highlight for one of many people's favorite players on Cloud9. It's going to be No-Tail.
Johan started very early as a child, almost just walking. He played Game Boys.
He was extreme clever, quiet, and he was just living in his own world. I always said that if I could duplicate Johan, I have 10 more children.
I remember in high school, he found out he wanted to play Dota full time.
Right there, I met some friction between especially me and my mom, but also my dad. I think they were a bit disappointed because games in their time was only related to something you actually pay to do, not something you can ever get paid for doing.
He's very, very talented in the ways of gaming. Like, any game he plays, he's actually really good at. Like, it's actually pretty scary.
So I forced myself to think different, because when he's that good, there will be a place for Johan. Of course there will.
In a game like Dota, you need to have a clear mind to do the right decisions. I admire how calm he is all the time, and he's very good at not only looking at his perspective, but others as well.
For all the new players, I'd only suggest that you try to understand other people, try to learn empathy. And this to me is what can make a really talented, great player an amazing teammate to have.
Normal people do have this filter, and they only say what you want to hear, but that's not Johan. You always got the truth when you're around Johan.
And he always makes time for me and his family and Pumbaa. He loves his dog very much.
He never get a dog because his father says no. But when Johan was 15 years old, his mother said, now you will have your own dog.
My dog, Pumbaa, he taught me like what I am. In today's world, it's all about presenting yourself to be something that you probably aren't. Like you're not this person that goes to party every weekend, but you want to look like this person. You can't do that kind of facade to a dog. You can't be fake. My biggest inspiration is Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. A lot of people laugh when I say it because it is kind of a funny nickname that he has. But then again, people laugh at one of my nicknames, so we got that in common.
What nickname do people laugh at of yours?
Big Daddy. At the moment, I'm being a bit selfish because I put my heart and soul into Dota, and I'm doing it mostly for myself because I feel like I have to be able to achieve my goal.
When I picked him up last year after TI, the first thing he told me that I have made my decision. Next year I will be a part of the final. Sorry.
He wanted this since he was a little boy, and I'm gonna cry. I just love him so much, and he has to go for his dream, and I'll be there supporting him.
Every time you generally just reflect back, then you also ask yourself, is this really important? I think it can be. I think it can be great to have won TI and to have set the goal and to have reached the goal. I think I would be feeling very, very empowered, feeling like I could do anything.
That was No-Tail of Cloud9. And yeah, I mean, quite a story. Of course, I mean, No-Tail, he's been known to have a lot of quotables, you know, in his career throughout. But I mean, he said some really impressive things. I think the way he put it, one thing that really struck out to me was we all talk about it, but how he said back in their time, gaming was the thing that you paid to do and not something that you could ever get paid to do. But now it has flipped, of course. We do have professionals here at TI being paid, and also, of course, they're playing for, you know, a sizable sum in prize money. But I mean, what did you guys think after that No-Tail video? He's, of course, talking about his dog. I mean, he's a likable guy after that video.
He's such a good role model. I think the overall vibe that I got from the video is like very happy. Everyone around him is just, you know, very exuberant and relaxed and calm and happy, and that's just a great thing to have in a Dota player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Winter, anything strike to you about No-Tail's video?
Well, you know, when we first started playing, everyone was like walking in this tunnel, and you have no idea when the light is going to come. And that's how we all started. And right now, like in the video mentioned, we are getting paid to do what we love, so it's, of course, a great thing to have at this moment.
No, I think for a lot of players, of course, it's an emotional moment, not only to play at TI, but if you go to the finals, like he said, and his parents, you could see that they felt it too. I mean, they never really probably understood what it meant to him until now, where he's like, I want to be on that final. And if he gets there, his mother is saying that, all right, I would probably cry if he was up there, and it would be a very emotional moment. So, again, a lot on the line, but it's not just Note. I mean, this story permeates for all 10 players that we're going to have in our first match against Cloud9 versus LGD. Now, just a note, as we jump into the first draft, yesterday we had all best of threes for the wildcard play-ins, but starting in the group stage, it is best of twos. So it's a point system. If you win 2-0, you get 3 points. If you tie 1-1, you each take 1 point. And, of course, the loser, if it's a 0-2, you get 0 points. So that's how we will have standings at the end of the week. Draft has started for our very first match, LGD versus Cloud9. This is how we are kicking off TI5 Day 1. Let's jump into the draft and see what we're going to find out. If we see anything new from either of these teams, we saw some interesting things during the wildcard play-ins yesterday. So I'm sure we can look forward to some fresh picks, or at least something that deviates from what the teams have played in the past.
I think going into the group stages now, there are going to be different priorities for the teams. Yesterday we saw actually very diverse picks. I was very impressed with how many heroes got picked by all the teams in the wildcard round. But I think, for example, for a team like Cloud9, they generally have a different approach to the metagame than I would say all of the teams we saw yesterday do. We already see it here. They're first banning a Clockwork against LGD, which I don't think is their general first phase priority, but it's just a hero they deem worthy of a first phase ban against LGD in particular.
I think that's the reason for that ban was because mainly the Chinese team, sometimes they give away Lash Rock if you have first pick, and they reply with a Clockwork. They view Clockwork as a way of dealing with Lash, because you hook shot in with a Blade Mail. It's a very good way of dealing with the Lash. So most of the Chinese teams, when they tend to give up Lash, they would actually go for the Clockwork.
So you think in some ways this was Cloud9 preemptively forcing LG to ban Lash afterwards, which they did?
I think Cloud9 likes having Lash. I don't think they would be scared to pick that hero.
I think that's the reason why, because
they banned it to force a Lash ban.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, okay. So they banned it because they figured maybe LGD has that trick up their sleeves, because the Chinese teams tend to. All right, well, that's a nice look into it. Afterwards, we do have SF and then Nagasiren being banned out, and Undying first pick.
Pretty surprising
for Cloud9.
That is surprising for me.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit surprising for all of us, for Cloud9 specifically, right? I mean, for other teams we talked yesterday, I mean, not surprising at all to see it yesterday in the wildcard plans.
Yeah, I actually expected a Tusk first pickup, especially because Yao is, I think, very well known to play it. I'm surprised that they gave it away, but I think Bone7, again, we discussed this before, he has a little bit of an unconventional view as to how to approach picks. He picks unusual offlaners for himself. He picks Envy, sometimes pretty unusual carries. I think they like, tend towards stuff like Luna a lot, even when she's not very popular, and even very different mids for Fada. So overall, their draft is going to be a little bit unpredictable.
Yeah, and it's one thing that LGD play good Tusk, but I think Cloud9 do as well. They love playing it on no-tail.
Yes.
They are going to let it go and get the Queen of Pain instead. This looks like what could potentially be the makings of an aggressive dual lane. The Quap Undying lane is actually very powerful.
Quap plus Undying is very strong. Even against a lane that is like a Gyros lane, Quap and Undying could potentially deal a lot of damage in the lane if LGD somehow have a very weak lane support with the Gyro.
Okay, well, Winter, yesterday we talked about, I mean, especially 3 of these heroes, right? Undying, Gyro, and then Quap, as you guys just mentioned. But what does Cloud9 need to either pick or ban here to make sure that they can secure that setup for the Undying? Or do they now just worry about that separately? All right, we've got that duo set up, then let's look at how we want to round out the rest of the team.